Yo, what's up guys, welcome back to another video. This is another geography type reaction and this one is on the top 10 most beautiful states in America by from here to there. I think I've done 2 reactions from this channel and I've enjoyed it so far. I've enjoyed what I've seen and I know a lot of their videos are probably going to be seen as controversial because I know some people get like sort of, not protected, but they sort of get, if someone says just the state that you're from isn't very nice or blah blah blah, whatever they say about it, and it's a negative thing, it's going to frustrate you because again, these videos are only from the perspective of one person, and from the perspective of another person, they may completely disagree. But this is just for me to sort of gauge and learn more about like the landscapes and just sort of like the difference in states and just all this kind of stuff. Because I've been doing these videos for quite long now, but I'm still learning a lot more stuff, and now I'm getting more into the sort of like the beauties, or like the actual scenery, like this, and like just the mountains and just the landscapes, like I just said. Before it was just about sort of states and just population and stuff like that, but I'm getting more deeper into these kind of things and I'm enjoying it. But yeah, I'm just talking a lot of rubbish at the moment. Let's get into this one. Hopefully you guys are going to enjoy. If you want to see more of this sort of stuff, let me know what kind of videos you'd like to see next. Quick shout out to my Instagram, my Twitter, links in the description for those. Same for my second channel, links are all there. But let's get into this one. Let's see what he's got for us today, man.
Before I say anything else, I have to say it isn't nice to judge. Every state is both beautiful and ugly in its own way. Take California, for example. On the one hand, you have Yosemite and Big Sur, but on the other hand, well, you have Skid Row and Stockton. To be completely honest with you, this was one of the hardest lists I've ever made because I really love the nature in so many states. But the West really is best when it comes to beautiful and unique scenery. Now, don't get me wrong, I grew up in the Northeast, and while there is a lot of charm to the small towns and wooded habitats there, it just doesn't compare to the majestic vistas and untouched wilderness found in the West. But don't worry, there are some eastern states on the list too. It does have a special place in my heart after all. Anyways, I ranked the states by their natural landmarks, national and state parks, eco-diversity, and accessibility to nature. Forget about good jobs or city amenities. I mean, who cares about money when you're surrounded by this? Probably goes without saying, but this video isn't for the material girls. So here's to you fellow nature lovers, and if you aren't a nature lover, well, keep watching to see why you should be. Cause these are the top 10 most beautiful states in America. Number 10, Maine. I know you're probably thinking, what? That doesn't look like Maine. Well, that's cause it isn't. It honestly was really hard to choose which state to put at number 10, so I'm starting the list off with an honorable mention. South Dakota. Wait, what? South Dakota? Yeah, it might come as a surprise if you've never been here,
wow,
but that's because it's incredibly underrated. I was
blown
away on my first visit, and not just because the wind cave. From natural grasslands to the Badlands to Spearfish Canyon and Custer State Park to the Black Hills, which are a heck of a lot more than just 4 dead guys.
See, I've never actually seen this, which is crazy. I've only ever seen this sort of landmark. This land is a landmark, right? When it's close up. I've never actually seen it when it's like zoomed out and going into it. How did they even do this? I don't understand how this is even possible, because like, how is it even possible to get up there in the first place?
Faces on a rock. The diversity of nature in the Mount Rushmore state is mind-boggling. I seriously have no clue why it's one of the least visited states in the country. But enough with my South Dakota obsession. Actual number 10 is Maine. You might not have given the Pine Tree State much thought if you live outside of New England, but as a New Englander myself, my family would take trips up here almost every summer, and let me tell ya, it is beautiful. Outside the Portland metro area, no, not the one in Oregon, the state is pretty much just untouched, gorgeous nature and really cute, charming small towns, which means there are endless opportunities for adventure, whether you want to hike, ski, swim, kayak, hunt, or fish. And if you're lucky, or maybe unlucky if you get too close, you might even see a moose. Maine's honestly one of the best kept secrets on the East Coast. From jutting cliffs to stunning beaches, if you include all the islands, Maine actually has more miles of coastline than even California. And speaking of islands, have you seen Mount Desert Island? It's home to Acadia National Park, which is pretty much the crown jewel of Maine. There really is no other place in America quite like it. Number 9. Michigan. Now, this might be surprising too, but Michigan's actually another state with more coastline than California. Granted, it's just surrounded by really big lakes, but they're so big that it almost feels like the ocean. You may have heard of the famously old-fashioned Mackinac Island, where cars are forbidden and horses and buggies transport you back in time around the Victorian town. But have you heard of Isle Royale National Park? The 400-island archipelago is actually the least visited national park in the contiguous United States, mainly because the only way to get there is a 3-hour-long ferry. But if you make the trip, or honestly just go anywhere in the Upper Peninsula, the wildlife and scenery you encounter will literally feel like a movie. And let's not forget the multicolored Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore, the isolated hilly beaches at Sleeping Bear Dunes, and Headlands International Dark Sky Park, which is one of the best places to see the stars, and if you're lucky, the Northern Lights. I could go...
See, that surprised me how the Northern Lights are actually in certain areas in the US. I remember seeing the comment section of a previous video that was sort of mentioned, and I always thought it was just in Scandinavia, but then I saw a lot of people saying people from like North America always thought you can only see it in like Alaska or Michigan or wherever. So it's interesting how wherever you're from, the closest sort of places where you sort of think it was only, obviously not everyone thinks that, some people will obviously know it's just all along the Northern Hemisphere, but still for me I just found it like really interesting that you can see it's as low as places in like Michigan. I just didn't know how that's even a thing, because that's like level with like the UK. Actually, it's lower than the UK. So I don't actually understand how that's a thing. But obviously, science is doing its thing, right? Science is doing its thing. But just that did surprise me when I heard about it. But it's another reason for it to be a place to visit, right?
On and on about the beauty of Michigan.
Look at that.
I mean, there are freaking ice caves and a rock jutting out of the water that looks like a turnip. Number 8. Oregon. When you think of Oregon, you probably just think of hipsters in Portland, or maybe something like this or this. But the Beaver State has pretty much every type of biome imaginable. You probably didn't know this was in Oregon, or this. The ecosystems here are seriously so dang diverse that each region feels like its own country. From beautiful beaches bordered by sinkholes, sand dunes, and giant rock islands, to lush national forests teeming with literally thousands of streams and waterfalls, to charming artsy towns like Ashland, Bend, and Hood River, the entire state just feels enchanted. The Cascade Range also runs through the middle of Oregon and is home to some of the most beautiful mountains in the country, and Crater Lake National Park, which is literally a giant blue lake at the top of a volcanic crater. It's honestly one of the most unique and gorgeous settings I've ever seen. And I haven't even mentioned the eastern half of the state, with places like the Painted Hills and Owyhee Canyonlands that you'll swear must be photoshopped. Oh, and there's also Hell's Canyon, aka the deepest gorge in North America, with a nearly 8,000-foot vertical drop into the Snake River. Needless to say, there's a lot more to Oregon than just Portland. Number 7. Colorado. Denver might be overrated, but there's a reason why so many people are moving to, or at least vacationing in the Centennial State. Take a drive on I-70 and you'll see why. Every curve of the interstate reveals a breathtaking view of the Rockies, before following the Eagle and Colorado rivers through the canyons into a landscape that looks like Mars. And this is honestly the least scenic route. The mountains are just gorgeous all around, with 58 peaks exceeding 14,000 feet. By far the most of any state. In fact, there are only 4 states in the country that even have one 14,000 footer. But while the Front Range is magical, Colorado is so much more than just a beautiful mountainous region full of world-class ski resorts and hikes. Head to the southwest near Durango and you'll find some of the most well-preserved Native American pueblos at Mesa Verde National Park. Or you can head to Colorado Springs to find some of the most beautiful red rock formations at Garden of the Gods. And Colorado's also home to the tallest sand dunes in North America. This state is honestly so diverse that even if you spent your entire life here, it still wouldn't be long enough to explore all the unique environments the area has to offer. Number 6. Washington. Seattle and rain are probably the first 2 words that come to mind when you think of Washington. But this state is so much more. Don't get me wrong, on the days where it isn't misty and rainy and you can actually see, Seattle's one of the most picturesque cities in the world. But the constant rain kinda is what makes the Evergreen State stay, well, evergreen. Speaking of evergreen, North Cascades National Park might be one of the most beautiful places on Earth. I mean, have you seen Mount Shuksan? Well, probably not, because it's also one of the least visited national parks, which is weird since it's only a 2-hour drive from Seattle. But even closer to Seattle are the majestic Olympic Mountains, and even closer is Mount Rainier, which is the most prominent peak in the continental United States, and also an active volcano. But hey, I'm not here to judge Seattleites' life decisions. It really was hard to choose which Pacific Northwest state to put higher on this list, but while Oregon is very geographically diverse, Washington is even more diverse. The Evergreen State is home to 63 different mountain ranges, the largest expanse of temperate rainforest in the US, tons of waterfalls, rivers, lakes, and ecologically unique islands, the Columbia River Gorge and the Scablands, the Palouse Hills, and charming...
Bro, this is 6... My ears itchy. This is number 6, and look how many different things there are here to explore. This is ridiculous to me, man. I don't know what is going to be ranked number 1. I'll probably realise when it comes to, okay, actually this makes sense, because I have done sort of videos in the past. I have done in recent history, like sort of touching upon landscapes and like national parks and stuff. And I know a lot of other states have a lot of national parks, but again, I've already said it. The diversity in all these states so far, it's just crazy. There's so many different sort of terrains and like landscapes and just all these different things to explore.
Mountain towns like Leavenworth. You know, maybe it is worth living under an active volcano to be near all that. Number 5, Utah. From the Rocky Mountains to desert canyons, it isn't hard to see why Utah has the 3rd most national parks in the country. You've probably heard of Zion and Arches, and no, that's not the moon, that's just Canyonlands National Park. There's also Bryce Canyon and Capitol Reef National Park, and a boatload of national monuments and forests, which are equally as impressive. As you can see, Utah shares a lot of similarities with Colorado and Arizona, but also has a lot of uniquely Utah things too. And I'm not talking about fry sauce. Besides the national parks, there are 43 state parks, and no, I'm not about to list them all, but just look at how pretty they are.
Bro, I mean, again, the diversity, the difference in all of these. I mean, these ones are somewhat similar, but still, just, it's crazy. It's crazy to me how there's just so many different sort of, like, I'm just repeating myself, but you compare this to like the UK, and I think all 4 of these would probably be seen as the number 1 sort of national park or state park or whatever you want to call it to view in the UK. And these are just sort of ones that are just in a state that probably many people don't even visit. And they're not seen in maybe the top 50 or the top 100. But you look at these and it's just ridiculous. How many... And again, it's in Utah. I feel like that state's not even the size of the UK. Maybe it is, I don't actually know. But it's just like, for comparison, it's just crazy.
The coolest thing about Utah, in my opinion, though, is that most of the nature is completely untouched, and aside from the super popular national parks and ski resorts like Zion and Park City, it's almost never overcrowded with tourists. If it had a coastline, Utah would probably be number 1 on this list, but it doesn't. And before you say, hey, what about the Great Salt Lake? Nobody actually likes how the Great Salt Lake looks, or smells for that matter. Number 4, California. I know a lot of you are probably wondering, why isn't California number 1? I mean, it is the most geographically diverse state in the country by far, housing nearly every type of climate zone in the world. But the one thing keeping it out of even the top 3 on my list is just all the overcrowding and pollution. Even though most of the national parks are 4 to 5 hours out of the cities, there are still so many people. Sure, there are a few secret spots where you can find some peace and quiet, but if you aren't a local and don't know what you're doing, you're never gonna find them. What you will find is 3,400 miles of pristine coastline and some of the best beaches in the world. To the south, you have La Jolla and Laguna, but more north, there's also Carmel, Moonstone Beach, Bowling Ball Beach, and the incredible Big Sur. But actually, don't go there because the locals do everything they can to hide the best spots from tourists. So why don't you head on over to one of the 9 national parks or over 300 state parks instead, both numbers being the most of any state. Try Yosemite, the Redwoods, or even Death Valley. Seriously, I cannot state this enough. Almost every type of scenery imaginable is here. The problem is...
I didn't even know there was any snow sort of areas in California. I mean, obviously mountains, it makes sense because it's colder in mountains, but I just didn't even assume that. Because I just assumed the whole of California was just piping hot, like one of the hottest places in the world. But again, even in hot places where there's mountains, there's snow, right?
Is that people
Hey, yo, this is GTA, isn't it? What is this beach called again? What is this beach called again? Is that the most famous beach? I can't bring the name to mind. But I know for sure this is GTA. Or the GTA map for sure.
And their pollution is destroying the environment, and not nearly enough funds are being allocated to protect it. But what can I say? It's not like money grows on trees. And even if it did, California would have probably burned through it by now.
Good point.
Pun intended.
Sad, but true.
Number 3, Hawaii. Hawaii is by far the smallest state on this list, so I guess it goes to show that size doesn't matter. Because what the Aloha state lacks in size, it makes up for in sheer beauty. There really isn't a single part of the islands that isn't jaw-droppingly gorgeous. Each of the 7 inhabited islands is entirely different in its own way, but some notable views are the Nepali coast and Waimea Canyon on Kauai, the bamboo forest, Honokohau Falls, and the road to Hana on Maui, the sea cliffs of Molokai, Lanikai Beach and the Coco Head crater on Oahu, and Mauna Kea and Volcanic National Park on Big Island. In fact, the Big Island alone has 11 of the world's 13 climate zones. From the history to the culture to the waterfalls, volcanoes, hiking, and world-class snorkeling and surfing, Hawaii is one of the most unique and diverse states in the country. Not to mention the nearly perfect weather with tropical temperatures and 270 sunny days a year. Number 2, Montana.
Perfection.
In contrast to the last 2 states, Montana has exactly 0 miles of coastline. So how the heck did it make it so high on this list? If you're seriously asking that question, you need to visit the Big Sky State, where, yes, the sky really does seem bigger. We all know Colorado is the Rocky Mountain state, but honestly, the Rockies in Montana remain unparalleled. The mountains loom majestically over vast and colorful valleys dotted by the lakes, rivers, and wildlife that run through them. A trip to Yellowstone will leave you bewildered by the power of nature, but the lesser-known Glacier National Park is actually, in my opinion, the most beautiful national park in America. And in the eastern half of the state, you have a complete contrast with places like Makoshika State Park with its badlands and dinosaur fossils. There are actually 55 state parks in the state, including the Lewis and Clark Caverns, Flathead Lake, Palisade and Kootenai Falls, and Bighorn Canyon. But honestly, the entire state could be a national park. Drive through just about anywhere here and you'll have a hard time finding a view that doesn't look like a painting, even in the urban areas like Missoula or Bozeman. And on a clear night, you might even see the northern lights. Again, now before we get to number 1, leave a like, subscribe, and let me know what you think the most beautiful state is. But without further ado, number 1. Alaska. Speaking of the Northern Lights, could number 1 really be anything but? Alaska is more grand, vast, and untamed than any other state. And it's not even close. It even has more coastline than every other state combined. And
oh, wow. I didn't know that. That is crazy. So every... Wait, are you... Wait, I'm kind of confused. Let's just look at the US map quickly. US map. Because I'm sort of thinking to myself, how is that even possible? Maybe this will help me sort of understand it. Wait, zoom out, zoom out. Wait, I can't zoom out. So you go... I mean, actually, you see that, and actually... God, Alaska's huge. I knew Alaska was huge, but huge, huge. Oh my days. Okay, that does make sense now. When you see it on a map like this, you realise just how big it is. Little old UK. But that is crazy. God damn, I did not realise that it had all the... I forget what they're called.
It's not even close. It even has more coastline than every other state combined. And that coast varies widely from the volcanic Aleutian Islands to glacier-lined black sand beaches to craggy cliffs to forested fjords. Sure, it does get really cold in some parts, but there is a heck of a lot more to Alaska than just snow-capped mountains. The Last Frontier is home to 8 national parks, each featuring incredibly different landscapes, ranging from Denali, home of the tallest mountain in North America, to Kenai Fjords, Gates of the Arctic, Glacier Bay, and Wrangell St. Elias, which is actually the largest national park in the nation. And while there are also 156 state parks to boot, Alaska's still the least visited state in the US, which might be due to the fact that there aren't many roads leading to the parks. You'll actually have to charter a plane to get to most of them. But that's also why the population density is just 1 person per square mile, so there are literally thousands of miles of untouched unique wilderness Angeles, and you're probably more likely to run into a bear, moose, or muskox than another person in the nature here. Where else can you find over half the world's glaciers, fjords all along the coast, rainforests, volcanoes, the 10 tallest mountains in the country, and even sand dunes? Alaska
Sand dunes?
is
What?
by far the most beautiful
what?
state in America.
And it's crazy how they just bought it from Russia for just a couple million back in the day. It's crazy. Russia must be kicking themselves so much from that, man. That is the biggest... that's the biggest L I think a country's actually taken. And on the US side, like, I swear they found oil there as well, so like the money's coming in as well. But it's just a beautiful place. As a truck driver who drove through all across the country, I think Oregon and Washington are among the 5 states. All the USA is beautiful. Greetings from Mexico. Congratulations, the USA is very beautiful. Greetings from Brazil. The whole West Coast is on the list. The West Coast, the best coast, right? The male version of Kardashian voice. California and Oregon are naturally beautiful. I've been to both. Living in Oregon has definitely turned me into a scenery snob. No doubt about it. Oregon is one of the most beautiful states in the USA. That's the thing with me. I've never really been able to experience, like, scenery and like landscapes, so I've never been able to fully appreciate it. I went to Scotland a few years ago. The scenery was incredible, but that's the only time I've really been able to sort of appreciate it. So I feel like when I go to like when I am able to start traveling in the future, being able to see these places would just blow my mind to another level where it would just make me want to explore more. But I'm just at the point now where I've never really been able to see crazy sceneries. Where I'm from now, the area around it, there's nothing. There's absolutely nothing. It's just flat land, just fields. And although some places in the UK are a lot like nicer in terms of how it looks, it's just how it is for me. So I'm hoping for like in the future I can just sort of be able to I am able to just explore and see some of these states and see other countries. Obviously not just the US. The US is just one of many that I do want to explore. Please do the top 10 states of the most boring scenery. I might have to see this as well because they'll probably all still be nicer than the UK or England, should I say. I shouldn't say the UK because Scotland is beautiful. There's parts of Wales that are beautiful. Parts of England as well, but just the majority is just dull, man. My list: California, Oregon. Oh, I don't want to read that. New Mexico's a state, in case everyone forgot. Yes, I love Alaska. Finally on a good list. But yeah, this is a good video, man. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. Let me know some more videos like this you want to see in future. And until next time, like, subscribe, and peace.